Have you ever looked at the world around you and felt a deep sense of injustice? You try to do the right thing, to live a life that honors God, yet you face struggle after struggle. Meanwhile, you scroll through social media or look at your community and see people who openly mock God, who are arrogant, and who live only for themselves, and it seems like they have everything. They're prosperous, they're healthy, they have no troubles. If you've ever felt that way, your heart is echoing the ancient cry of a man named Asaph, the writer of Psalm 73. He was a worship leader in Israel, a man dedicated to God, yet he found himself in a profound crisis of faith, teetering on the edge of spiritual collapse. He confesses in Psalm 73 verses 2-3, "But as for me, my feet were almost gone, my steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish, when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." He looked at their lives, seeing them not in trouble as other men. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish, and he heard them speak loftily against the very heavens. This observation led him to a dangerous and painful conclusion in verse 13. "Verily I have cleansed my heart in vain, and washed my hands in innocency." He essentially says, what's the point? I've kept myself pure for nothing, only to be plagued and chastened every single day. This is a raw, honest, and desperate place to be. His faith was hanging by a thread, tangled in the confusing knot of what his eyes could see. Then, in the middle of this downward spiral of envy and despair, everything changes. He gives us the single most important turning point of his entire crisis in one verse, our focus today. Psalm 73 verse 17. "Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I their end." This verse is the pivot upon which the entire psalm, and indeed his entire worldview, turns. It's the moment the lights come on. Notice what changed his perspective. It wasn't a change in his circumstances. The wicked were still prospering outside. His own problems didn't magically disappear. The change happened when he changed his location, not just physically but spiritually. He went into the sanctuary of God. This means he deliberately stepped out of the noisy, confusing marketplace of human observation and entered into the quiet, holy presence of God. The sanctuary, the temple, was the place where God's presence dwelled. For Asaph, this was an act of worship, an act of seeking, a conscious decision to stop looking horizontally at the world and to start looking vertically toward God. It was a choice to stop trusting his own limited, pained perspective and to seek God's infinite, eternal perspective. And what happened in the sanctuary? He says, "Then understood I their end." In the presence of God, he was given a glimpse of the final chapter. He had been so fixated on the current, temporary success of the wicked that he had completely forgotten about their ultimate destination. In the light of God's holiness and justice, he finally saw the truth. The verses that follow reveal this newfound understanding. He realizes their prosperity isn't a sign of God's blessing, but a slippery slope to ruin. Verses 18-19 say, "Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castedst them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation, as in a moment they are utterly consumed with terrors." He saw that their success was a fragile facade, a dream that would vanish in the morning light of God's judgment. Their end wasn't one of peace and continued prosperity, but of sudden, terrifying desolation. From God's perspective, their life was like a beautiful sandcastle built right at the edge of the tide. Impressive for a moment, but destined for complete and sudden ruin. This teaching is a powerful reminder for us today. When we find ourselves slipping into envy, when we feel that our faith is pointless because the world seems to be winning, the answer is not to analyze the wicked more closely. The answer is not to try and figure out God's plan from our limited viewpoint. The answer is to follow Asaph's example. We must go into the sanctuary of God. For us, this means deliberately setting aside time to enter his presence through prayer, through the reading of his word, through worship with other believers. It is in that sanctuary, in that place of communion with God, that our perspective is corrected. We stop focusing on the temporary now, and we begin to understand the eternal then. We are reminded, as Asaph was, that true wealth and true life are not found in what this world offers. After his perspective shift, Asaph concludes with one of the most beautiful declarations of faith in all of Scripture in verses 25 to 26. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside thee. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever. He went into the sanctuary bitter and envious of what the wicked had, and he came out realizing that in having God, he had everything that truly mattered for eternity. When the world confuses you, don't look harder at the world. Look longer at God. Enter the sanctuary. It's there you will understand.